Hey everyone, Dr. Ellie here with another podcast. My practice is Middle Path Integrative Pediatrics. I'm located in Asheville, North Carolina. And if you have kiddos 0 to 21 who need a pediatrician and you're looking for a holistic pediatrician, then I can help you. I also do functional medicine consults for kiddos aged 2 to 102. So if you're in need of help with anything in that realm, I can also help you with that. But today we are talking about starting solids. So this episode is actually inspired by my members, who many of them are either starting solids now or going to be starting solids soon. And so I wanted to bring this episode to you guys so that you would know how to do that and do it holistically. So I'm naming this episode From Milk to Munching, which I think is just adorable, a holistic guide to starting solids. So like I said, this is in a really exciting time, and not only because it's a really important milestone for kiddos around the 4 to 6 month mark, but it just opens up such a world of sensory exploration for kiddos who are discovering, babies are discovering new tastes and textures and smells, and, they get to feel food and mash it with their fingers and, pick up those finger foods as they progress, and, they'll move from smooth milk to puree and all of that. Plus, it's a really fun time just to bond with your baby, and, sharing food is such an important, joyful, cultural experience for most people. And just having them to learn to eat so they can eat with your family is such a fun and messy experience. So let's dive right in. We'll explore all kinds of things: when to start solids, key nutrients for babies, information about juice and water, all those liquids, what you need to know, baby-led weaning versus spoon feeding, fermented foods, allergenic foods, homemade baby food hacks. Of course, being a pediatrician, I am not leaving out what those cute little poops are going to look like after you start solids, because they do change quite a bit. So let's start with when to even start solids. So I get that question all the time. So generally, it's around 6 months of age and when your baby is showing signs of readiness. And so what are the signs of readiness? Well, it's, can they hold their head up well? Are they able to sit in a baby chair, their high chair or one of those other little baby chairs, hold their trunk up well and their head up well enough to be able to eat? Are they opening their mouth when the food comes? So if you're, for example, spoon feeding, do they open, like they want to take a bite? A lot of times I'll see babies kind of lean forward towards adult food, and they're sort of almost like they want to take that bite. Also, can they move like the food from a spoon into their throat or from your fingers into their throat? If you're offering a puree, for example, and they push it out of their mouth and it's like dribbling down their tongue, they're probably not yet able to kind of move it back and swallow the food yet. So you could either dilute it a little bit and see how that goes, or just wait a few weeks, a couple of weeks, and try again. Sometimes they still have that kind of tongue thrust where they can't move that food back well. So may not be time yet. The other thing would be just kind of thinking about their weight. Sometimes that's a helpful cue. So, generally infants will double their birth weight around 4 months of age. And that may be another sign that they're ready for solid food. But I really like to go by if they're able to sit up well and hold their head up well and they're interested and they're opening their mouth and all of that. The next question I kind of get is, well, okay, so it's time to start feeding solids, but how much should my baby eat? That's a great question. And sometimes I find that it's better to almost just look for those hunger cues and signs of being full. And I'll still give you a couple of guidelines, but in general, don't stress yourself out, with like, my baby must eat this like exact amount. Otherwise, I don't know, something terrible will happen. That's not the case, because really, those nutrients that babies are getting from breast milk and formula are the foundation for their nutrition up until a year old. So at 6 months, 4 to 6 months, a lot of it's like practice, trying new tastes, getting the flavors, allergenic foods, which we'll talk about later, those kinds of things. So you don't have to be too worried about, oh my goodness, my baby has to have this exact tablespoon at this age. So for all you engineers out there, you can throw away your spreadsheets. You can stop using those apps unless you're just interested. That's fine, of course. So what are hunger cues? So it can look like an excitement around food. It can look like an open mouth. A lot of times, again, when babies lose interest in food, they'll you may worry that they're, not eating enough, but generally they are. So if they're turning their head away and they're just kind of not into it, they might be done and you can just sort of move on. But if they are kind of wanting to take a bite and they're looking excited, they probably need to eat a little bit more. And again, remember, fluctuation is normal. Some days your baby will be more hungry than other days. Just like you or I, maybe they quote unquote exercise more that day by moving their arms more, who knows. And so they may be more hungry on certain days than other. Also keep feeding that breast milk formula, so you don't want to stop that. And I said as a guideline, I would tell you, so in general, babies 6 to 8 months old will typically eat like 2 to 3 meals of solid food a day. And then from 9 months onward, then they may want 3 to 4 meals a day with maybe a couple of snacks. And again, portion size, there are many factors, growth spurts, how hungry they are. So don't get too hung up on exactly how much at each meal they should be eating, because most of the nutrition does come from that breast milk formula. But in general, 6 to 8 months, 1 to 2 tablespoons per meal, 9 to 12 months, 2 to 4 tablespoons per meal, and then snacks. But again, you don't need to make yourself overly nuts about this. So let's move on to different ways to feed your baby or different ways to start solids. So in general, there's 2 different strategies. One is baby-led weaning, which most of the time people are like, what? When I talk about baby-led weaning. And then the traditional kind of spoon feeding with purees, which most people have heard about. So let's talk about the differences between those 2 things. So the main difference is with baby-led weaning, generally what we're doing is we're allowing babies to like self-feed, while with traditional purees, the babies are often like spoon feeding or like, being fed by a parent like a puree or something like that. With baby-led weaning, for example, you're going to be doing, like chopped or minced foods, you're eating like with family, and, proponents of it, do kind of say like it can help develop fine motor skills, learn self-regulation, help, kids explore a variety of foods and textures. And so the process of baby-led weaning, it typically involves the following steps. So first of all, you would offer your baby small portions of whatever's on the family menu. Of course, no salt, sugars, processed foods, stuff like that we'll talk about later. Pieces should be like easy to grasp, but small enough to prevent choking, which we'll talk about later too. And ideally, your baby would sit with your family to eat. Generally, people will use like a high chair so that, you can eat at the same time and you're not trying to like hold baby and eat, but whatever your preference is fine with that. And you want your baby to be close to you, but you're not trying to take over for them. So you're letting them kind of reach for food and eat at their own pace. So again, baby is self-feeding and you're offering something like mashed potatoes or yogurt, and you could provide a spoon when they're old enough and, show them how to use it and let them kind of go to town. Also, you just wouldn't want to like force them to finish all their food or anything like that. You really want them to get a sense of, hey, I'm full, I'm done, and they'll just kind of stop naturally. Keep in mind, they do learn by doing. So, when your baby bites off too much, the extra will spill out of their mouth. And, helping them discover what fits or doesn't, they'll kind of figure that out. They may have some gagging though, which we'll kind of talk about what the difference between gagging and choking is later on. And that can happen when babies are trying to protect their airway. So just kind of know about that. Again, there's some possible benefits. There's not that many studies on it, but advocates do point to, it might promote independence by letting little ones feed themselves. You're offering more flavors and textures, which could reduce chances of picky eating later on. You're focusing on whole foods instead of like processed food and, purees in jars and squeezy packs and things like that. And you're letting babies, stop when they're satisfied, which may prevent issues with obesity or weight control later on. Another benefit could be improved motor skills. So now they're learning to grasp food, handle a spoon, chewing and swallowing by themselves. But potentially there could be some drawbacks. It's possible that your baby might take too few calories. Like let's say they are only eating fruit and they're just not eating that meat or something like that, or they're not getting the best nutrition because they're choosing only, applesauce. They're not wanting that sardine or whatever it may be that you're feeding them. So that's a potential drawback, is that perhaps they're, limiting their diet. Choking, obviously that could be very dangerous. So like, sometimes you see like videos of kids like eating like a whole chicken leg or something, but that can be dangerous and misleading. So, you do want to be really careful because choking is one of the leading causes of unintentional death for infants. So this is a risk that parents really need to kind of consider. But some studies show that baby-led weaning doesn't pose a higher risk of choking than traditional feeding. So we'll just have to kind of wait and see for more information. Okay, so since we're talking about it, gagging versus choking. I think this is really important for parents to know. So gagging is a way for the baby to protect their airway. That's what they're supposed to do. So they may like push their tongue forward. They may make like retching movements, almost like they're gonna throw up. They might be coughing or sputtering and have watery eyes. They might get flushed in the face. They may like vomit a little bit. They're trying to get something up. They may have like noticeable sounds and facial expressions and things like that. Choking is very different. They will have like a most likely no cough, but if they do have a cough, it's very, very weak. They could have no sounds coming out or a very high-pitched squeaky sound. Their color of their skin may be pale or bluish. They may even be looking panicked, confused, or terrified. So if you are seeing that, that's when you're going to want to administer those thrusts to the front and back. And of course, we don't have time in this episode to explain CPR, but I do encourage every parent to go and take that infant CPR course so they would know what to do in case their baby chokes. This is rare for this to happen, but I think it's important for you guys to know how to do it. And also, if this is happening, please obviously call 911 immediately. Okay, traditional feeding. So before we kind of jump into how to do it, let's just kind of talk about the equipment checklist, just so you guys know, hey, this is some equipment that might be helpful to have around before we even start doing some feeding. So high chair, people have different ideas about high chairs. I kind of like them. I think, it puts baby at your level. You can have baby at the dinner table next to you. So you're starting a tradition of eating together. You can take bites in between feeding your baby. So you're not kind of trying to like hold your baby and eat at the same time, which can be less enjoyable for some people. So if you're using one, go ahead and just kind of make sure that you do get one that they're securely fitted in with a safety harness. And of course, you never want to leave them unattended in a high chair. Bibs, like pelican bibs, silicone bibs, it's going to be messy, you guys. So get ready. You want to make sure you have bibs. Some people even put like mats on the floor around like the high chair. Try to avoid feeding on carpet. If you have a really cute outfit on, you might want to have them change out of that. If it's grandma's special outfit that they bought for the holidays or something like that, you may want to get that off them. And then spoons. So you're going to want some like soft weaning spoons, which are more gentle on baby's gums. So, you don't want to get those like really hard, adult metal spoons, but like a nice soft weaning, like silicone spoon or something like that. A small plastic bowl. So you do want to have like a special weaning bowl with like a suction base to keep it, from flying off, off into the distance if your baby chooses to swipe at it. And then a cup, like a first cup is really, really nice. Yes, it's going to get spilled. Yes, it's going to be a mess. And yes, your baby's going to learn. And this is really good for, motor coordination or motor control, all of that. I always get the question, sippy or not. If you're able, let your kid have a cup. If you're not able, you're out and about, something like that. A sippy is okay, but you do want your baby to at least be trying at some point with a cup. When they're 6 months, it might be a bit more challenging. You're going to maybe need to help, all these things. So just kind of play with it and see how it goes. Yes, it's going to be a hot mess. So be prepared. Again, messy mat underneath the chair to catch the mess, newspaper, potty pads, whatever you have that you can easily clean up. Another thing that can be helpful is just to have little containers or ice cube trays. That can be helpful if you're batch making food. And if you're batch making purees, you can put them in little trays like ice cube trays or little plastic containers, or silicone would be even better, less toxic, and then freeze those into small little portions. That can be really helpful. So how to make the food. Okay, so what you'll want to do is you want to cook the food. So cook your fruits or veggies by steam or baking until tender. Don't use salt or sugar. Make sure the meat is cooked, that you've removed bones, nothing's a choking hazard. And then you put it in the blender and you're going to basically puree it. So you could add a little water or breast milk to kind of thin it out if you need to, but you just want it to be kind of like applesauce consistency. Again, the freezing, you could serve it immediately or you could pour it into like the little trays and go ahead and freeze that and use it later. Okay, let's dive into what in the world to feed your baby. So there's no like hard and fast rules, except for there are certain foods that we want to avoid. And I will talk about that in the next segment. But there are some key nutrients for breastfed babies 6 months to 1 year that you may want to kind of focus on or zero in on. And one of those is iron. So most babies have like enough iron stored in their bodies in the first 6 months of life. However, if you've been told your baby's iron deficient and they're preemie, the birthing parent's iron status was off, there's like some, umbilical cord issue, there could have been, some iron deficiency before that. So you always want to just check with your pediatrician about your baby's iron needs. But in general, full-term, healthy baby, healthy pregnancy will have enough iron until about 6 months. But by 6 months, they do require an external source of iron other than just breast milk. That's because we want to make sure that we're not, developing any kind of anemia or brain issue or anything like that that would be a problem. And you need enough iron to make sure that you're not getting low red blood cell counts, which is anemia or brain development issues. Another nutrient to zero in on would be vitamin D. So, breast milk in particular kind of, doesn't have good bioavailability of vitamin D for the baby. And so most pediatricians will actually recommend supplementation. I know that I do for breastfed babies with vitamin D daily, and the requirement is about 400 IU per day. You need this because it's helpful for bone health, it's helpful for your immune system, it's helpful for brain and eye development. There are a lot of things that you need vitamin D for. So we'll talk about the foods that you can get all of these nutrients from a little later. But what else? So zinc is one that we want to zero in on for babies, and breast milk does provide some zinc, but zinc levels do continue to kind of decrease each month postpartum. And so eventually breast milk won't meet the demands for older infants. And so you'll need zinc from an external source to help with growth and immune function and wound healing and things like that. B12, vitamin B12, this is primarily a concern if the chest feeding parent is vegan or vegetarian. B12 is found primarily in animal products, and mother and birthing parents who are deficient in B12 will produce breast milk that is lower in B12. And so, it is important for brain development and developing healthy red blood cells. So we do want to make sure that we are getting B12 from a food source. DHA, oh my goodness, am I going to even be able to say this right? Docosahexaenoic acid. Let's just say DHA because that is super hard. It's an omega-3 fatty acid. It's important for brain development, eye development, and it's present in breast milk, but the levels depend on the mom's diet. So we do want to make sure that we are getting some DHA in the baby. And so given this information, what are some things to focus on? So foods to focus on. So for iron, pureed beans, white beans, pureed beef liver, or you can open up a liver capsule and mix it in other foods. You can use lentils. I love those dark leafy greens like spinach. Tofu is a great choice. Kidney beans, sardines, chickpeas. Vitamin D for that. Fish is a really good source of vitamin D, which may be surprising that I think a lot of people are surprised when I recommend fish as a first food, but I think it is absolutely great as long as you remove those bones and puree. And if you're not doing baby-led weaning, obviously you want to get those bones out. But trout, salmon is great. You can also do mushrooms, tofu, the pureed edamame, sardines, and egg, especially egg yolk. And for zinc, pureed oysters, which a lot of people really don't think about oysters as a baby food, but they are fabulous. If you can chop them up, mix them into other foods, puree them, that can be a really good source of zinc. Pureed beef sirloin, blue crab, pumpkin butter. So this would be like peanut butter, but pumpkin. A lot of times you'll just have to make that at home. There are great recipes online. We don't have to talk about that today. And you just give it to your baby by swiping like a little bit inside their cheek or mixing it into other food. You're not going to give them like a big lump of like a nut butter, like a peanut butter that they can't swallow. So just be kind of careful with that. Pureed pork loin, pureed turkey breast are always great. And then when it comes to B12, beef liver again, clams, oysters, and nutritional yeast, but you guys have to check the label for that one to make sure it does have B12 in it, that is fortified with B12. And then salmon. And then DHA, Walnut butter is great. Again, it's like a peanut butter, but it's walnuts. So again, you just smear it inside the cheek or mix it in with other foods when baby's ready. You can do ground flax flour mixed in with other foods, not uncooked flour, but like ground up flax. And then salmon, herring, sardines, and mackerel, also great for DHA. So you might be noticing a bit of a pattern. So for example, the fatty fishes, the beef liver, the nut butters, but let's not also forget, we want to add a lot of color to the diet too. So we'd want to get vitamins and minerals, right? And where do you get all of that stuff? Pureed fruits and veggies, dark leafy greens, sweet potatoes, squash, carrots, all of the things that have that color you want to add to the diet as well. And some people do some baby cereals as well. A lot of people start feeling a little overwhelmed. If that's you, what I would recommend is just focus on introducing a variety of foods regularly. And if you have any dietary restrictions like vegan or vegetarian, just talk to your pediatrician about how you can avoid nutrient deficiencies in your baby's diet. So, if you enjoyed the episode, go ahead and share it. Subscribe, of course, join future discussions. And if you have any questions, or suggestions for episodes, email this to me. I love getting those. And of course, if you are in Asheville or surrounding areas and you would like to join the practice and become a client, I take kiddos 0 to 21 for primary care, holistic primary care, and then again 2 to 102 for functional medicine consulting. And I think we're going to do a future episode on, who's that really good for. But in general, gut issues, skin issues, fatigue, overweight, oh my goodness, there's so many things, you guys, hormonal stuff, rundown, burnout, longevity. But if you need that and you're in North Carolina, South Carolina, or California or Florida, I can do some telehealth with you as well. So again, I'm Dr. Ellie from Middle Path Integrative Pediatrics in Asheville, North Carolina, and I hope this was helpful for you, and I'm wishing you well. Okay, bye.